Hi again. Continuing from where I just left off, this is part 2 of chapter 4 of Go Your Own Way. You know, this is the bit with the thing, you know what I'm on about, the scene that makes you all go, ah! So, yeah, if Devon is watching this, I suggest you stop. But, stay if you want. Don't hate me for it. Anyway. Chapter 4, part 2. Okay. Yeah. So, for being the shortest part of his day, his unwanted lunch with Blaine had given him a lot to think about during his final class pre-calculus. Mrs. Carruth, who he'd had the previous year, was a nice middle-aged woman who adored him. It made replaying the last half an hour in his head 1,000 times easier, because she already knew he was a good kid and focused on rooting out troublemakers elsewhere. And Blaine would try to protect him, or was he using Kurt as a shield? Neither option made any sense to Kurt. Even his friends rarely stuck up for him or tried to stop Asimov and ferocity, in fact, the only time that ever really came to his aid was when they had that glee lesson on theatricality at the end of last year. There was no reason for Blaine to do it if his own friends didn't, and as for him being a shield for Blaine, that's always ridiculous. The bruise on Karofsky's face was more than enough evidence of that. But what really confused him was the absence of the McQueen comment. The fact that Blaine had known his outfit designer, and might even know about Patti LuPone, hooked him a lot more than the junk issue. He knew it might be the other way around, but Blaine hadn't shown any indication of having any interest, of any of his interests. The other interest of his that Kurt was even aware of was cigarette trouble in himself. He didn't like those options either. He started in his seat as the afternoon announcement started in his seat. Okay. He may have stared while sat in his seat, but I don't think he started anything. Anyway, he started in his seat as the afternoon announcements chimed in. The dismissal bell followed, and he shuffled out with the rest of his class, stopping by his locker to grab the books he needed for his homework, and then trekking to Mr. Robinson's classroom for his attention. He was still dreading it, but he couldn't help but hope he might get some answers to the questions he now had. Mr. Robertson was seated at his desk, pouring over papers, and he nodded. Ah, Mr. Hubble. Grab a seat up front. Mr. Robertson put down his pen and pulled out one of his desk drawers to pull out a worn paperback book and handed it to Kurt. Here, you missed these being handed out yesterday. Kurt glanced down at the cover. The Count of Monte Cristo. That is important, so here's the book. This must be the first novel for the semester. He was disappointed that it wasn't something he'd already read. He dropped his bag next to his seat by the wall, eyeing the vocabulary list written on the chalkboard next to him. Chalkboard. I suggest you spend the next 2 hours reading what has been assigned for tomorrow, Mr. Robertson had settled back into his desk chair. With a glance at his wristwatch, he added, whether out loud to himself or to Kurt at anyone's guess, why do I get this feeling that Mr. Hamilton will not be joining us? Kurt looked at the clock on the far wall. Their detention was set to start at 2:30. It was a 2:45. He hated that he wasn't relieved as that Blaine was skipping. He wanted answers, and when Kurt Hummel wanted something, he did everything in his power to get it. After another 5 minutes of waiting, watching the door and the clock, he decided to take Mr. Robinson's advice and settle to read until 5 o'clock. Loud footsteps had connected with the heavy boots that spent more time rubbing against his cloth than walking echoed from the hallway. Blaine appeared around the doorway, jacket slung over his shoulder, and a few books carried at his side. Somewhere in the region of his throat, Kurt's heart twinged like a rubber band. Blaine's dark clothes were soaked with what Kurt could only assume was water. The beads were slowly dripping down onto his shirt, leaving dark spots of green on the green fabric. He dropped onto his desk next to Kurt with a crooked smile, and Kurt suddenly had an eyeful of toned muscle of Blaine's left arm. He sucked in a sharp breath and looked back at his book. How kind of you to join us, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Robertson said, with bearing down on them. And he was suddenly much less kind than he had been with Kurt. He thrust Blaine a copy of the assigned book and said, in quick tones, "You'll stay an extra half an hour to make up for your tardiness." Blaine just grinned mockingly at him and gave a cheeky little salute. The next hour passed without. Even though Kurt had his face buried in his book, his eyes kept drifting to Blaine. Every time he had seen him today, he ended up with more questions. Blaine, on the other hand, didn't seem to notice his inattention. Much to Kurt's surprise, his eyes were glued to the textbook on his desk, pencil tapping furious in pages, while his tongue piercing clicked in time with his teeth. It was a good thing he was already unfocused, because the fast-paced beat would have made it impossible. He really needs to stop starring and read. He's starring. He really needs to stop staring and read. It says starring. I feel better. But the more Kurt looked, the harder it was to turn away. Fantasies were chasing each other around in his head, getting progressively more provocative and provocative. Stopping straight the wet path up the column of his neck. Rough, calloused hands were gripping his hands and hips hard enough to bruise. As their bodies rushed against each other, teeth were scraping and nipping, moving up to bite roughly on his earlobe. A warm tongue flicked smooth the pit in his skin. His own teeth pierced his lips with a fork as he poured down the broken bone. He shifted around in his chair, discreetly trying to rearrange himself in his pants. The movement caught Blaine's eye. Suddenly, very aware of himself, he sat up, ran straight, trying to look as dignified as possible when his cock was throbbing painfully in his tight jeans. Thank God he'd worn knee-length sweater today. At least it covered up the straining gorge. He wished a glance at Blaine as he felt a breath stutter in his chest. As inexperienced in sex as he may be, he wasn't completely obtuse. Those damn hazel green eyes were darker than he'd ever seen them. His skin prickled as he was thrusted under Blaine's hot gaze. Another shot of the rosal curls in his stomach. Blaine was getting bedroom eyes. Fuck. He sucked his bottom lip into his mouth and glared hard at his book, willing to transport him to the safety of his bedroom where he could finish his fantasizing without an audience. Another painful throb made him shift into comfort. God, he hated that boy. His brain was becoming so fuzzy he barely heard the scrape of the desk chair as Mr. Robson stood up and stretched. Some coherent part of his brain registered his teacher saying he was heading out for a quick bathroom break, and then he had both better be in the same spot when they returned. Clearly, Blaine hadn't heard the last part. As soon as he was out of the door, Blaine was out of his desk, and oh God, there was no mistaking the bulge. Sorry, spider. No mistaking the where I was at. Taking the bulge now at his eye level, and then he was yanked out of his seat, strong hands grabbing fistfuls of his sweater and pressing him backwards against the chalkboard. The chalkboard! He almost squeaked out of protest about ruining his brand new Alexander McQueen, but then Blaine's hard body was sealed against his own, crushing him against the chalkboard. A hot, needy mouth found his time, and this time he did not looking to stop his broken moan that came rushing out of him. This is funny. Blaine took the opportunity, thrusting his tongue between Kurt's parted lips and forcing Kurt's legs apart with his knee. Kurt's head was spinning. The chalk tray was digging sharply into his ass, but God, he didn't care. There were teeth and tongues and hot breath everywhere. Nothing of the sweet innocence he'd imagined his first real kiss. Strong hands were tracing the sides of his body, finally settling on his ass, as the tongues dueled for dominance. His hips jerked forward on impulse when Blaine drew up his bottom lip between his teeth, biting down harder than was possibly necessary. Blaine groaned throatily in response and sucked hard on his lips, but vibrations and shockwaves of heat straight to his cock. As his hips jerked wildly again, but this time Blaine's hips surged forward, thrusting down hard against Kurt. He felt like he was shattering into a million pieces. He couldn't believe anything that was happening as he torn his lips away from Blaine, as he sucked down a gallon of air. But Blaine didn't stop. His hungry mouth attached itself to Kurt's jaw and neck, his teeth scraping against his skin. I'm not going to bother reading that word. He was relieved when he was easily hoisted up and pressed firmly against the chalkboard. His legs wrapped tightly around Blaine's waist. He ached from the chalk tray digging into his ass as he no longer had to worry about his legs collapsing beneath him. Blaine's mouth shot out his again, his hips rolling slowly against Kurt as he held him up against the wall. The fact that he was strong enough to support all of Kurt's weight just turned him on even more. Quick panting breaths slid over his lips as Blaine pulled away, just enough to whisper against his mouth, "Fuck, I want you so much." Kurt whimpered and did the only thing that made any sense in his hormone-filled brain. Changing words I can't read. His hand tangled into the dark curls at the base of Blaine's neck and yanked his mouth forward, crushing it against his own. Blaine hummed against his lips, increasing the tempo of his hips and digging his fingers into the skin stretched over Kurt's hip bones. If he kept this up, he knew he'd have bruises in the morning, and his favourite pair of jeans would be absolutely ruined. He still couldn't find the willpower to care. His hand traced down the defined muscles of Blaine's broad back, down to the dip of his spine, where his fingers pressed into warm, slightly damp flesh. A deep moan vibrated against his lips as his fingertips dipped under the waistband of Blaine's jeans. Something outside the hallway shattered. With a gasp, Kurt tore his lips away from Blaine, his feet falling back to the tile floor as he shoved the other boy off him. It was like someone had flipped a switch in his memory. Blaine, the boy who landed him his attention and been borderline sexually harassing him since the moment they'd met. And he, Kurt Elizabeth Hummel, had just spent the better part of the last 15 minutes having clothed the sex against the chalkboard of the same boy. No, just no. How could he let that happen? Why the hell did it have to feel so unbelievably good? Mr. Robertson appeared in the doorway, his hands full of shattered remains of what had been a ceramic coffee mug. His shirt and tie were splattered a rusty brown, and he was cursing underneath his breath. Kurt slid back into his seat unnoticed, ignoring Blaine, who was still standing in the same spot, breathing hard. Ah, Mr. Hummel, you are... Mr. Robertson dug through the desk drawer his small pile of napkins and proceeded to start patting down his coffee stick. Free to go. Mr. Anderson, return to your seat now. Kurt unceremoniously shuffled his paperback novel in he had made no progress into his bag and darted from the room. Once he was in the empty corridor, he broke out into a rant, or as much as a rant as he could manage when he was still half hard in his jeans. There was no way, absolutely no way, that he had just done with Blaine Anderson could ever happen again. Yeah, so that was part 2. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a fun read. Obvious sarcasm. Or is it? Yeah. So, I'm not going to bother reading any more today. If these actually upload tonight, then you'll have this. So yeah. Fun! It's on Tuesday. I don't know what day it is. Thursday! Thursday now! It was Wednesday. Anyway, bye!